We've talked a little bit about Black History Month and jokingly a couple weeks ago about Roger Moore's James Bond adventure being an appropriate choice. This, to me, feels like a much more appropriate choice for Black History Month because this lady is getting revenge on all the white people.
Yeah, I agree. I think several years ago when we started the podcast, you introduced me to this genre of films, Blaxploitation. We started off with
Human Tornado. Which famously you did not give a crit 22.
My biggest rating regret, followed maybe closely by Coffy.
Yeah, man, that's one that we talked about before as well. And I love the movie Coffy, and I feel like that was not reflected in my enjoyable rating for it. And I may have made it sound more bad than it was when I gave my bad rating. So I don't know. This is maybe a chance to make amends here. What do you think?
Well, and I think that's what Black History Month is all about, right? It's a time to re-educate ourselves.
White people making amends?
Well, not necessarily making amends, but learning and changing and recognizing contributions of people for a long time. And this is definitely a film that can help us hopefully make amends for our bad ratings on some of the others. I think for me, Coffy was hard because my expectations of Blaxploitations were framed by Human Tornado, and it was so different. But we watched quite a few since then, and I'm excited to talk about this one, Foxy Brown, today.
There's a lot of pressure on our ratings now for this, after we were fucking said we didn't rate Coffy highly enough. I don't know. You don't want to come in low on this one during Black History Month, right?
Hopefully not.
Welcome to Bad Movies and Beer. I'm Cooper.
And I'm Nolan.
And today, as discussed, we are going to be talking about the unofficial sequel to Coffy, the movie that you and I both feel like we did not rate fairly. It's Foxy Brown, once again starring the incredibly talented and attractive Pam Grier. In that order. She's talented first and attractive on the record.
Same director, writer for this one as well, right? Jack Hill?
Yeah, some white guy.
So it was
we didn't mention that when we did Coffy. It was a white guy.
Oh, I didn't know that. Yeah. That's one of the things that's so fun about the Human Tornado, right? And the other movies.
I mean, listen, this was the nature of the Blaxploitation genre. It is a little bit exploitation. And of course, with most things, the power in the production companies at the time was with white guys. And so we're kind of getting that part here. But the flip side of that coin, we've discussed this, is it does give people like Pam Grier a chance to shine. And we're going to hopefully celebrate that shine today, right?
Yeah, I think so. This film, did it get a bunch of criticism when it came out? Like, what was the reception for it?
It was not like a crossover hit by any stretch of the imagination. But it left a lasting cultural impact, clearly. Inspiration for Jackie Brown years later, Tarantino, at least partly. There is, of course, you and I lived in the 90s. There was a lady rapper named Foxy Brown.
I think of the Kill Bills, too, like being largely inspired by this, too, but same director as...
Sure. Yeah. Quentin Tarantino's not afraid to make a heroine the star of his movie. Not the kind of heroine we're going to see later in this one, the drug that they try and make her docile with.
Yeah, so... we can go into this kind of expecting there's going to be a lot of corruption. There's going to be a strong woman fighting back against that corruption. Probably some bad stuff is going to happen to her and her family at the start. And will she get her revenge, or how will she get it at the end of this? And I'm excited to see how it unfolds.
We know she's going to get her revenge.
Well, I don't know.
That's the nature of it. It's going to happen.
I guess that's true.
But yes, there will be tragedy. There will be a roller coaster of emotions, ups and downs and whatnot. And, we'll be riding that roller coaster alongside it. But before we get to all the details, as always, we have paired the movie up with a beer. And I don't know about you, but I feel great about this beer connection. What are we drinking today?
This is a good connection, although I feel a little uncomfortable with it, but we can talk about that in a second. So we're going to be drinking Downtown Brown.
Downtown Foxy Brown.
This is a nut brown ale, and it just hits a little bit sexual in its naming for me. This is to me like...
Oh, I thought your problem was the downtown part, because that implies a certain like urban,
No, I was thinking downtown as in like below the belt, and
oh Jesus!
All right, but this is a beer from the Amsterdam Brewing Company. I'm not sure that they will want the connections I've just made with their beer too. But they're a Toronto brewery. They've been around for a really long time. Like I think they opened as a brew pub in the 80s, and were making sort of beers inspired by a like Dutch expatriate. He was trying to bring some cool beer flavors to Toronto, and then later they opened up a large brewery and another really cool down by the water in Toronto brew pub, which we've been to several times.
Yeah, that's a great spot. And we should also mention that we did an Amsterdam Brewery beer very early on in the podcast. I think maybe like our 7th or 8th episode. We drank Space Invader when we watched Killer Clowns from Outer Space, so it's nice to have another Amsterdam beer, a little comeback here on the podcast.
Yeah, that one, Space Invader, was IPA, I think, right?
It's like their flagship IPA, isn't it? It's a very popular one.
Bone Shaker's the one I think of.
Oh, yeah, good call. Them, right? No, like, that's a better.
That's kind of the one that there's their flagship IPA, like a really traditional malty one. But this is also one of their flagship beers, Nut Brown Ale. Really smooth drinking, sweet. I've had several of these before. I assume you've drank this one before too.
I don't think I have, actually. We had a brown ale not too long on the podcast. It's a style I enjoy. In fact, did one of us get one in the beer draft this year?
I think you drank one in the beer draft. Yes, I think you did, the Christmas one. So I really like them. I find them really dangerous because I find that they're really easy to drink, but they're also kind of sweet and can leave you really hungover. So it's one that I like having one or two, but like keeping clear of drinking too many because they are very crushable, and I expect that you'll find this one crushable too.
Oh yeah, the can does claim drinkability, and I believe it because again, that is a style that, same thing. I find it very drinkable. Although, yeah, there is a sort of a sweeter side to it, malty, just a kind of classic Europe. I think of European taste with this. Whenever I think of a brown ale.
British for me. This makes me think of Britain. I think it's Boddington's is one that I've had quite a bit of, which is I think a traditional.
Or Newcastle.
Yeah, maybe it's Newcastle too. Yeah. They make. Yeah. I think this is a British style in my mind, but you know.
Well, as much as we shit on the British 2 weeks ago for Live and Let Die, I'm willing to give this a shot. What do you say we crack this open?
Sounds good. Get ready to go downtown
with FOXY BROWN.
Yeah.
So after an incredibly funky opening credit sequence that features not a small number of close-ups on Pam Grier's cleavage, we open on a pair of headlights and a car making its way through a very, very dark street. It is just immediately clear to me that they had zero budget to light these exterior shots.
You're right. It's really hard to see here. It does build a bit of the suspense because you have no idea like where this car is going. Very quickly, though, we transition from the darkness into a character. We've got a tall black man walking through the street quickly, looking for someone to support him because we can tell the people who are in this car are after him.
Yeah, and believe it or not, when the guys in the car get out, they're white. A couple of white guys menacing this somewhat flamboyantly dressed gentleman as he makes his way down the street. This character's name is Link, played by Antonio Fargas, who's a familiar face from this era of movies and television. And it certainly looks like something is about to go down as he kind of sidles up to an all-night coffee stand when suddenly a couple of uniformed police officers walk up. And what we quickly learn is that their presence has bought Link some time. He recognized the white guys from the car as people who are there to kick his ass or worse over a drug debt. So spared for a moment, he places a call for help to his big sister, FOXY BROWN, played by the always lovely Pam Grier. And she immediately makes an impact in this movie by getting out of bed and casting one hell of a silhouette.
They use some creative lighting to show her taking off her nightgown and getting into her bra and panties. And they don't show us anything here, but they certainly make it very close, right? They are keeping the audience waiting, but not too much here.
Yeah, they're teasing us a little bit, although I said to you at the time and it ended up being true. I'm like, we're going to see that later. Don't worry.
And we do.
We do, yeah. Like every Pam Grier character, FOXY BROWN is a lot more than just a good-looking woman. She is someone who can take action, as evidenced by her daring rescue of her brother. She rolls in just after the cops leave and the white guys are going to kick his ass, which leads us into a great action sequence where Link dives into her car through the sunroof and one of the white guys jumps onto the hood. FOXY is not having it.
Get off! Get off the goddamn fuck! I can't see where I'm going! Shit! Alright, I'll get the son of a bitch off.
And sends him hurtling through a railing into a nearby lake or river or something. And I don't know about you, but after all the other Blaxploitation movies we've seen, I was stunned that this was an actual stuntman flying off the car and not a dummy.
It is true. This is, I don't know if that means higher budget. Here is going to happen in our action sequences.
Didn't seem like it based on the lighting earlier.
That's true. It's interesting. They didn't have the money for the light, but they do have the money to send a real person, pay him to crash through this barrier here and go flying into the water. She gets away with Link, takes him back to her house where he can hide out for a little bit, and then gives him a real talking to, right? She thought he was out of this sort of drug game, and yet he hasn't started over. But we're going to get some backstory here. Why are these guys after Link, and why does she feel obliged to help him out of this situation, I wonder?
Well, he's her brother, man. Come on, you got to look out for your family and for your community. That's a big theme of Blaxploitation movies. But when she confronts him about kind of leaving the criminal life, he claims they're after him for a gambling debt. Something to do with a lottery drawing, which we've seen in other movies as well. It turns out later on it's actually drugs. Apparently he either used or lost or just kind of blew a key of cocaine. These guys are after him. We're going to find out who he got the cocaine from, though, in the next scene as we meet our movie's big bad. And it's a lady who is maybe trying to do a British accent. It's kind of hard to tell.
Yeah, it's weird. And she kind of loses it throughout. This is kind of like the Jamaican accent we hear in Coffy.
Wow. It's not as bad as that. That was really bad, but still.
It is interesting here. The big bad is this white lady. She's in charge of this criminal organization. She's got a bunch of thugs. She controls the ones that went after Link. And we're even going to find that she's connected even more closely to some of the things going around Foxy Brown as we get further into the plot. Interesting, though, choice, right? White lady as the key villain. All of the villains are also white people in here. We don't actually have... I find in some of the others, we've had a lot of black characters that were working with the white people who are also a part of the crime area. And there's not a lot of that in here, which is kind of cool. I think that was good.
Yeah, that is something we don't have. I mean, unless you count Link, there's always white people as the villains in these movies. But yes, we often get that character where it's the black person betraying their community. But no, the focus is much more on her. I did say it was hard to tell what her accent is, but what's not hard to tell here is that she will not tolerate failure, a fact which she has her second in command, Steve, relay to those two goons from the opening scene before sending them away so she can bone this guy. Now, at this point, I don't know if this movie is going to end with a big slap fight between her and Pam Grier, but I really hope it is.
Are you thinking about some of the fights we saw in Coffy, particularly in the...
I don't need this lady to have her top ripped off, but I would like to see at least a little hand-to-hand. We don't really get it, but, whatever.
In the intro, we did see Pam Grier practicing some karate moves, so I'm hoping she might break those out at some point.
Yeah, it's all speculative at this point until we get further in here.
You know what's not speculative?
What's that?
It's the scene we're about to get at the hospital.
Oh, God, that's true. Foxy's brother mentioned back at her place earlier that her boyfriend is some kind of FBI informant and that he'd recently been shot. We see that that's true in a moment when Foxy goes to visit him in the hospital. And we also learn that he's recently undergone plastic surgery as part of a witness protection thing. Foxy likes what she sees when the doctor takes the bandages off, but even before that happens, we find out that she is very supportive about his recovery. She brings him flowers and a whole lot more. What about it, Noel?
I love that you're leaving this for me to describe.
I'm going to ask you to describe something else later on, too,
yeah,
and it will be unrelated to this.
Oh, yeah. Good. Thanks. A bit of a face-off situation here, right? He is having his identity changed, both his physical looks and his personal information, so that he can sort of escape the things that he was doing to help take down people in the illicit drug trade. She greets him with the most positive way that you can possibly meet a man in the hospital. She brings him flowers, asks if he's all right, and then immediately lifts up his gown and starts going to town on his dong.
She is definitely... she is going downtown for sure.
She needed to see if it was a bit of a off situation, and she's happy to find that he still has his original tool. She must have been satisfied with it before.
And that it still worked. It's an FDR American badass situation. She wants to make sure it's... still works. And it does. Because before you know it, he's basically like, all right, shut that curtain. Let's do this for real. And they're about to start boning. But then we get some comic relief here. What happens?
Yeah, so she's on top of him, and they sort of start getting into it when the nurse comes in who needs to give him his sponge bath. And oh my goodness, she kicks off.
This is not a sexy nurse.
No. This is a like all business lady who kicks off Pam Grier, yells at them both for trying to bone down, and then starts scrubbing him down quickly. She sees that he still has an erection, and she slaps his like really hard, not a pleasant slap, like a grumpy hard slap. You see him make that like, oh, it hurts noise as they finish that. Big laugh as that happens.
Yeah, man.
And then we transition to the doctor taking off the bandages that are currently covering his face. He kind of has an invisible man look right now, so they're going to remove all of that bandaging, and we're going to get to see his new face. Foxy's okay, I think, either way, because the goods are still intact, right? So she's going to go with it. But like you said, she is happy with the new look.
Yeah, man, she likes it, and he doesn't just get a new look, he gets a new identity. They're giving him a new like driver's license, passport and stuff, and he even apparently has a new name. Michael is going to be what he goes by now. And before you know it, he's back on the street looking to clear out the various drug pushers he was fighting against from more of like a grassroots level, having become disillusioned when the government was not able to make a case against our lady drug boss. So he's going to try and do this sort of like more of a vigilante thing. And Foxy hooks him up with some friends who are doing just that. In fact, we get to see this crew in action in a fairly hilarious fight sequence that involves rolling a baby in a carriage out into the street as a decoy. These guys are not playing around.
Well, they didn't roll the baby out in the street, though. The guy they were taking down pushed the carriage out to try to get away. But it was an ordeal, this whole thing. There was a guy pretending to have a limp, and he uses his cane to take him out. Tons of people crashing into each other. This action sequence is hard to follow. We have, like, the baby's mom getting crashed into a bunch of garbage cans. Lots of garbage cans used to hit each other and knock down. It feels a bit like a WWE wrestling match here. We even get some karate chops, but eventually they take down the bad guy. Mr. Anderson, this new Michael, is impressed with this whole thing that was going on. And he starts thinking maybe vigilante is the way for him too. But before he can deal with that, he's got to have one more doctor's visit and some time to get back and connect with Foxy.
Well, I don't know about an official doctor visit. Foxy does take Michael back to her place after this, though, where he meets Link, who seems a little standoffish before quickly departing. Michael's a little offended by this, but Foxy explains that her brother is maybe not the best guy. In a quote that will become sadly prophetic as we get further into this movie.
He's like that. He always has his feelers out like a cockroach.
This might not be enough to put things out of Michael's mind completely, but I know what will. Some classic 70s lovemaking where the guy just lays on top of the lady and barely moves. This happens every time we watch one of these movies, and it cracks me up.
It is true. It's just a topless man laying on top of a woman. We get the classic 70s funk music, which tells us what is happening. We zoom in and we see some clothing on the floor and then him on top. At least give him some credit. Mr. Anderson, Michael here, after being on top, decides to move down and go downtown on Foxy Brown. We sort of cut.
Yeah, he's getting some downtown brown. Amsterdam Brewing is not going to be happy with this at all.
No, they're not. I don't know if they want cunnilingus connected to the taste of their beer, but I don't know.
Yeah, man. He's doing it all, that's for sure. He just wants to see if his new mouth will work, and I guess it does.
Yeah.
But Link is back after they're done boning, and he basically floats the idea to his sister of him selling Michael out to cover his massive debts. He just tells her, I might do this, and she's like, you better not. But we know he's definitely going to. And sure enough, in our next scene, we see the big boss lady's crew arguing about whether the tip they received, presumably from Link, is legit. Catherine Wall, that's her name, says she believes it, and either way, they can't afford to risk it if he really is still alive, as Michael knows enough about their operation to bring them down. So she dispatches her goons to Foxy Brown's house, where Foxy realizes just a bit too late that her brother did exactly what he said he was going to do. And I have to say, bad job by Foxy Brown. As long as he didn't warn her like 30 seconds ago, come on.
She should have definitely followed through on her instincts that her brother was going to be a piece of shit. He has not indicated to her in any way that he wouldn't do that. So, unfortunately for her, her brother sold him out, and we get quite an interesting little scene here where Foxy just arrives back at the apartment. Mike is following behind her, and as he's walking towards the house, we see the goons or thugs of Miss Wall, or our Catherine character, pull up in a car and pull out a gun, and we get quite a cool shot before he gets
shot. The parking meter?
Mm-hmm.
You think this was kind of heavy-handed, though?
No,
or was that like...
I liked it. I like that they were telegraphing the kill a little bit, because they didn't show the bullet shot into him. What they do is they show the time expired sort of label on the parking meter. When your money runs out, it has that little red thing that flips over.
As he walks by. Yeah.
It zooms in on that, and then we hear the car squeal up, and then we hear the shots fired, and we even see the corpse of Michael crash into the door from the other side. And that's it, man. Link sold out her sister's boyfriend or partner just so that he didn't have to pay back that 20 grand for that lost kilo.
Yeah, man. Young people who have only ever used digital parking meters have no idea what the fuck you're talking about.
They're
right
like,
now.
huh? Don't you just pay on an app on my phone?
Yeah, exactly. No, I thought that was a cool shot too. Like it's a good idea to frame it like that, because it does tell us, like, oh, this dude's done. And yes, Michael is dead, and Foxy is understandably hot about this. So she goes to her brother's house and fucks his shit up. She shoots the place up and tells him to get out of town, but only after he gives up Catherine Wall's name and the details of her operation. Foxy also leaves him with a warning.
You think you're back in with those people, but they gotta stick a dynamite up your ass and the fuse is burning. You understand me? Now I want you out. Oh, you.
God damn, she is indeed a strong woman, as Link tells his lady companion / coke whore.
Yeah, I had some questions about the timeline here. Did she not try to get him to a hospital, or they just ignored all that? Time expired told us that he was dead and there was nothing left. It goes immediately from time expired to her at Link's house, and she even says he needs help. He's been shot.
Yeah, he's in the car. He's been shot. Yeah.
Yeah. I just wondered, it was an interesting timeline there. I like that she comes in and kicks ass. She even shoots part of his ear off. Right? As a warning to him. She's been practicing with that gun, and she's pretty good. I do love, what you mentioned, Link's comment about her. He says, "That's my sister, baby, and she's a whole lot of woman." And I had a pretty good giggle at that. And you know what a whole lot of woman would do? She would go join that group of prostitutes so that she could get in at Miss Wall.
Yeah, man. No, it turns out Catherine Wall runs a prostitution ring in addition to the drug trade. So just like in Coffy, it's time for Pam Grier to go undercover as a hooker, which she does, interviewing with Miss Wall and not even having to do a terrible Jamaican accent this time. I think we were both relieved about that, right?
Absolutely relieved, for sure. She does put out a really strong "I will fuck anyone if the price is right" vibe here, and that gets her a tryout. That gets her a foot in the door to be a part of Miss Wall's staple of ladies. This is not a low-grade group of women, though. These are women who are only there to influence congressmen and policemen and judges, right? These are the women of the highfalutin.
Yeah, this is the high-class operation, although when we see a couple of these ladies in action, I'm not sure they've done a great job with their vetting process, but we'll get to that in a second. Yes, having successfully passed the interview in record time, Foxy Brown reports for duty at Catherine Wall's cat house in what is just an iconic outfit. No description I can give here is going to do this thing justice. You really have to see it. And Catherine Wall's number 2 guy, Steve, is there. He sees it, and he likes what he sees. So we can go ahead and assume there's going to be even more trouble in the future between Catherine Wall and Foxy Brown, right?
Yeah. I would kind of describe it as similar to the outfit worn by the woman in Fifth Element. The straps holding everything in place, but there is so much to hold in place on Pam Grier.
You know what? That's a good call, but it's not. Wasn't it suspender style in the Fifth Element? This is more of an axe.
It's a little bit wider.
The straps over the
yeah.
But
that was
really
my first
something.
conviction. It really is. Yeah. And when Steve sees it, just like you suggested, his eyes are perked. And this sets off Miss Catherine. She does not like it when her man takes a look at some of the other ladies. She starts tearing into all of her working women.
Well, listen, man, she's got to assert her dominance here. She's in charge and needs to remind them of what the deal is. And we actually do get trouble in a minute, but it's not between Catherine and Foxy. It's between one of the other hookers, Claudia, and her husband, Willard. This guy shows up at the cat house just as Claudia is giving Foxy way too many details about Catherine Wall's operation. Seriously, she could not be giving more details if she tried. And this guy is here to tell Claudia that he's taking their son to Seattle and to say goodbye. This domestic dispute causes Catherine, Steve, and a couple of goons to come outside, where Willard makes the colossal mistake of taking a swing at Steve, which means that now this kid's last memory of his mother is going to be his dad getting punched by a white guy in a kimono. Bad times.
This is rough. You're right, Claudia, right here, full of exposition, giving out too much information before we have this, weird tragic incident of her husband getting beat to shit. She gets over it rather quickly, though, when she starts taking some downers in the car with Foxy.
It's amazing how that works, right? Yeah, man. Speaking of bad times, Foxy's first assignment is to attend a party full of rich old white guys, judges, lawyers, etc., who basically spend their time watching porn, nailing hookers, and making racially insensitive puns. Pam Grier plays along at first, even with the puns.
I see Your Honor likes that dark meat.
The darker the berry, the sweeter the juice, honey.
But as soon as she gets that old judge in her room by himself, she taunts his manhood and kicks him out into a hallway where he's shamed by some gaggle of ladies in sun hats. And Claudia is right there with her, doing it the whole time. But once this guy's out in the hall and the reality sets in and that maybe the downers are wearing off, Claudia is suddenly very nervous about the situation they find themselves in.
Yeah, they were told that they needed to make this judge have a good time so he would make the charges against some of Miss K's, thugs go away. But instead, they do. They make fun of him. They say his dick is a meat shortage. And they just completely humiliate this old fat white guy. And I mean, I'm enjoying it, right? Obviously, the corrupt judges and others it's entertaining to see them get their just desserts here. He gets kicked out into that hall. He harasses another patron of this hotel before those ladies sort of jump down on him. The Karens of the past take him out, rightfully so. But like you said, Claudia knows they're in shit now, right? They didn't do what they said they would do, and Miss K does not allow that to happen. They are not going to be able to work anymore for her, and so Foxy decides she's going to put Claudia up in her place for a little bit, protect her as she goes and gets more information. She's already got enough info, I guess, about the operation she didn't actually need to put out with that old white guy, which good for her.
Oh, definitely, yeah. And as you said, Foxy promises to help get Claudia out of the prostitute life and reconnect her with her son, but that's not going to be easy, especially since Claudia is hopped up on downers and not used to civilian life. Maybe that's why she disappears from Foxy's house and wanders into a lesbian bar, where she's immediately hit on by someone who looks like a really butch Carol Burnett. Foxy shows up to get Claudia out of there, and that's going to lead us to a brawl that, if I'm being honest, is way less fun than the hooker fight in Coffy, although it does feature a couple of hilarious wooden chair shots.
Is it because there's no tops being torn off here that you're a little bit disappointed, or were you happy that many of the lesbians did not have their shirts ripped off?
Can I say both?
It's a little bit of both
here. Things at once.
You could have had both. They do good work with the stools and chairs, though. Lots of them broken over each other, people eating it. One woman even goes through a jukebox, and we get like a kind of fake electrocution that actually is pulled off pretty well. Some smoke coming from that thing. They escape this fight in the bar, stumble out into the alleyway, only to find that the people at the bar had called Miss K's henchmen. Steve and his two goons are there, and we get a little bit of a silly chase down an alleyway with garbage cans being thrown, bottles being chucked. Foxy Brown even smashes a bottle on one of the goons' faces, and he does not take it well. Good news, though, is Claudia gets away. She escapes at this moment. Bad news for Foxy, though. She gets grabbed by the goons.
Yeah, man. You didn't mention it in the last scene, but Foxy says she has a black belt in bar stools or whatever. Wasn't that the show?
Oh, yeah. The one woman in the bar tells Foxy that she's not taking Claudia out of there because she knows that Steve and his goons are on the way. They've been told to stall. And she threatens her with her black belt, yeah. And Foxy says, "Fuck your black belt, eat my fucking stool," and she just smashes it in her face.
I have a black belt in bar stools.
It's pretty amazing.
Yeah. No, Foxy Brown is captured here by Steve and what's left of these two goons. One of them gets his face sliced by that bottle, like you said. And not only has she been captured, but Steve has figured out her real identity and her connection to Michael. So the only question now is what to do with her. Catherine Wall has a solution. Inject her with heroin and send her to the ranch, where in between the boys doing God knows what to her, they'll make sure she gets a nice big heroin habit that will make her easy to control. This is a grim proposition, and sure enough, when we meet the boys, it's pretty rough. I'm going to let you take it from here as our resident expert on wokeness.
Oh, God.
Come on.
This is my least favorite section of the movie.
Tell us all about it.
Oh, my God. By a lot, this is my least favorite section. She wakes up in this, she wakes up to this, stereotypical hillbilly music in the background. We just get,
There's a little bit of banjo
going on. Yeah, banjo, bad twang. She is a mess. The mattress she's on has no sheets cover anything, covered in stains. There's heroin on the table beside her. She tries to get up and sneak out of there. She sees one guy passed out on the couch and another working on a car. He's sort of funneling some gas from a tank into the car as he's working on it. She gets out into the parking lot of this place, and it looks like she's about to hop into a car to escape when the guy on the couch comes out with a bullwhip, a massive whip that he swings, grabs around her neck, and starts bringing her in. The amount of derogatory and racist terms that come out of his mouth as he's dragging her in are incredibly uncomfortable. I know this was made for an audience at a time, but this section really, really hurts my enjoyment of the movie. Not only do they drag...
You didn't think the setup of these guys being such giant pieces of shit and her eventually killing them, it's not worth it for you?
They go so far that it made me very uncomfortable. So they drag her in, the two of them joke together, they tie her down to a bed, they inject her with more heroin, and then one of the really gross guys rapes her.
Which we don't see. Thankfully they don't show it. And then they transition to her waking up from being raped and out of this heroin high, and she finds a razor blade and cuts her way out, and we show some cool determination here. She crafts a weapon out of a clothes hanger and uses it to gouge out the eyes of the one guy, and then douses the other in gas and lights the whole motherfucking place on fire. And I'm not sad to see those two disgusting, gross hillbilly characters killed in this event. It was just a lot. I had trouble with this scene. It made me very, very uncomfortable. Yeah, but you realize, obviously, this is all set up. This is the point, right? They're trying to point out how fucking shitty these guys are so that when she kills them, it's this great triumphant moment, right? But yes, she has to go through
what she has to go through to get there. This is the
Yeah.
lowest point for her in the movie by a long shot, and she's already had her brother give up her partner who gets murdered, and then this is lower than that by a significant amount. The shit they say and the way they act in this is as grotesque as a character I've seen in almost any movie.
I mean, I agree. These guys are awful. You don't have to be woke to realize they're huge pieces of shit. But when we watch Coffy, there's a fucking a legitimate lynching. They drag a guy behind a car with a noose around his neck. I feel like this is I'm not trying to compare. They're both terrible. What really bothered me in this scene, not really, but was when she sprays the one guy with gasoline, and the guy fucking says,
This is gasoline!
You know it, motherfucker.
right before she lights the match, we already knew. They didn't need to spell it out for us. Come on.
You think they were telling the audience?
Yes.
It wasn't him being oh, fuck, you just dumped gasoline on me.
This probably shouldn't be what I'm upset about. Like, obviously.
Of all the things you're mad about in this whole section, this shouldn't be the one. It is rough.
I know I'm mad about all of it, but like, again, I recognize it as setup. The part that bothered me from like a filmmaking standpoint is they didn't need to tell us that. Come on.
So she dumps it. She throws some lit matches at them, and the whole place lights up. The two of them, we assume, take it. They don't show us. They do show her.
They're dead. No, we find out the next scene because Catherine Wall.
Yeah, and they tell her that it's gone, which is good. I don't know if it was necessary as a sequence. I don't know. She's already as down and out as you can get. Why do you have to send her to like this strange hillbilly place where she gets raped and fed heroin?
I don't know, man. Like, if you're the hero, you have to go through some adversity. But I do see what you're saying. It kind of borders on like the excessive. But either way, she's out now, and Catherine Wall is clearly in trouble. We know where this is going. In fact, after hearing about the explosion, which burned down the ranch and yes, killed these two guys, Catherine's not happy, so Steve decides to impress his boss/lover by taking care of Foxy Brown himself. Because if you want something done right, you know. Anyway, his only lead is Link, who has, of course, not left town. So Steve pays him a visit at the worst time possible. At least have the guy finish first, Steve. Goddamn, come on.
Oh, he's, Link is having sex with his lady. They're doing coke. While they're boning down, and here's that knock on the door. He gets there, and Steve tells him he's got some drugs for him, and that he needs to give them to him now. He tells him he's deep and he can't take them at the moment, but
that's not what he says. He says, I'm balling my old lady. He says, I'm deep in my old lady. Come on.
That's pretty close.
That would have been funnier, but
that's not pretty close. Yeah, I like. Yeah,
that's not that close.
So he goes to open the door ajar to take the drugs, but of course it gets sort of kicked in, and Steve is not having it. He's asking where Foxy is, and he unleashes a sawed-off shotgun blast into the side of Link, who's covered in blood immediately, right? Like, there's blood everywhere. He kind of runs into the bedroom where his woman is. She's screaming. They don't give either of them time to tell them where Foxy is. Steve finishes off Link with another shotgun blast, and then the other goon slits the throat of Link's lady and leaves them both dead in that apartment. We don't feel bad for Link or his woman here, though. We know that it was kind of coming to them. Despite them being a part of Foxy's family, he sold her out and was really only about the drugs, not about anything else. So we don't feel terrible for them, but it is kind of an interesting and gruesome action scene here.
I mean, I feel worse for them than I do for those two guys at the fucking ranch. I'll tell you that right now.
Oh, God, yeah. We don't feel anything for those fucks. Like, clearly they deserved it. I just wish Foxy didn't have to go through that. But I guess it does tell you the motivation for the remainder of the film, and she is going to take no fucking prisoners the rest of this motherfucker.
Well, it also speaks to her strength, too, because to go through all that and still come out as determined and resilient as she does, that really, like, you know...
You can't break her, yeah.
No, exactly right. That's exactly right. And on that note, with her brother and her boyfriend dead, Foxy is looking to take Catherine Wall down before Steve can get to her, but she's going to need help. So she goes to that vigilante group that Michael is going to be a part of to ask for their assistance. They aren't totally on board as they're more of a neighborhood group, and this is definitely out of their neighborhood, but she wins them over with an impassioned speech.
It could be your brother, too. Or your sister. Or your children. I want justice for all of them. And I want justice for all the other people whose lives are bought and sold so that a few big shots can climb up on their backs and laugh at the law and laugh at human decency.
Fuck yeah, let's get these motherfuckers. Come on, guys.
Yeah, good build here. They make a plan. They need to find the pilot who's bringing the smack in for them from Mexico. And if they can get a hold of him where this drop-off is going to happen, then they have all or most of the people they want in one place. This is where they're going to get their start. We transition to Foxy going to a bar where the pilot is hanging out, and
yeah, she finds him immediately. It's like right away.
So fast. I don't understand the connection. She hears the story he's telling about part of his like ridiculous stuff that he's doing, and then she goes up to him and says she's never flown before and would love a chance to see. And of course, using her feminine allure, she convinces him to take her on this flight where they're picking up the drugs and going to drop it off.
Yeah, she appeals to his ego too. He claims he's the best damn airplane driver in these parts. That's a term I had not heard before.
I spit my drink out when he described himself as a driver. Yeah, I was like, holy shit, yeah.
We find out quickly, though, that part of the reason why they need to get to this plane is to get past the corrupt cops who set up roadblocks for Catherine Wall so Steve can get the drugs without being interrupted. And as you mentioned, Foxy Brown does this by essentially seducing the pilot, and it works like a charm, as it definitely would in real life. Like, let's be honest here. If you were a pilot and Pam Grier was like, take me up in your airplane and maybe I'll blow you, you'd be like, sure, baby, climb aboard. I've heard you use that phrase before.
I prefer put your weight on it, but...
Put your weight on it. There's a nice little Black History throwback there.
Sure, yeah. Oh, she's looking to become a part of the Mile High Club here, I think, is a part of her.
Well, I think he is what it is.
Well, that's true. She's never been in a plane. He hasn't been in Pam Grier in a plane.
He's never been in Pam Grier in a plane. Who has? It's an elite group. Yeah. Oh, my God. Well, she is in the plane. I don't know if he's in her or not, but she is in the plane. And she's made it to the drop site. So once the pilot gets out to deliver the merchandise to Steve and his crew, Foxy slides into the cockpit and takes control of the plane. And with the guys from the neighborhood watch or whatever they're called distracting the cops, she's got more than enough time to fire up the engine and use the plane's propeller to slice through these goons. Or at least slice through some totally realistic dummies who kind of look like them.
Oh my God. When she takes the plane and drives off, and then she heads right for them. The pilot dives out of the way, but the goon does not. He takes a couple shots at her, and we get that shot of the plane smacking a dummy, and we get a head fly off, and a bit of viscera, but it is hilarious. The plane continues forward and crashes into a small hut that has one of the guys we had found earlier, a guy who was helping with this drug deal. We assume he's dead too, but Pam's okay. She gets out of the plane with the help of one of the neighborhood watch guys, and things are kind of under control here. The neighborhood watch and Pam have taken out most of the goons, and it's just Steve trying to escape. Is he going to get out of this situation?
Oh, fuck no. He manages to dodge the plane and get to his car. Before he can drive away, the neighborhood watch guys stop him and drag him out of there, holding him steady while Foxy Brown cuts his dick and balls off. She castrates Steve apparently to death as we see Catherine Wall seemingly mourning him in our next scene. Can you die from getting your dick cut off?
If you bled out, I guess, but as long as you put something on the wound so that you would stop bleeding, you would survive that.
You put your weight on it?
With a bandage? Yeah, maybe.
Maybe.
I mean...
Can you believe she does this shit?
I can't believe it. When they pull off his pants, the guy's there in tight European underwear, and he's like, you can't do this. No. And then you just hear a scream as she, like, goes at him with the knife, and you're like, holy fuck, they've cut his dick off. I laughed really hard. I was questioning whether he was dead or not dead. It would obviously be crueler to leave him alive, I think, at this point, but... we will find out. We transition to that funny picture of Steve. Like you said, it felt like she was mourning. I think she was just horn-dogging over him. She was worried about where he was, looking at his picture. But instead of Steve arriving home, it's actually Foxy Brown who arrives. She shows up at the place and has a bag in hand. She enters and allows herself to get caught by the guards who are there so that she can deliver this bag to Miss K. The guards take the bag and give it to Miss K, and then what kind of scene do we get here?
Yeah, man. So I kind of thought that Catherine Wall, like, knew that Steve was dead, but didn't know exactly what had happened. That was kind of how I interpreted the picture thing. But she finds out what happened in a second because, yeah, the goons are ready for Foxy when she kind of slinks in there. And they take the bag. What they are not ready for, though, is what is in the bag, because one of them looks inside and is like, I don't know, it's like some kind of pickle jar. And this is where I realized that Catherine had no idea about the whole castration part of this. Because once they hand her the jar and she sees Steve's dick and balls floating in there, she lets out a massive scream, which is all the distraction Foxy needs to plug the two henchmen. And when Catherine Wall charges her with a knife, Foxy puts her down with one in the shoulder. Now, Catherine asks the question we're all thinking here.
Why did you kill me too? Go on, shoot! I don't want to live anymore! That's the idea. The rest of your boyfriend is still around. And I hope you two live a long time. And then maybe you get to feel what I feel. Death is too easy for you, bitch. I want you to suffer.
And with that, Foxy Brown walks out, gets into the car of the head neighborhood watch guy, and basically says, let's get out of here. As a freeze frame takes us to the credits. Hot damn.
I want a little bit before we finish and talk about the end here. How did you feel about Miss K dropping that pickle jar with his dick in it? It's smashing, and we get a shot of a dick flying through the air.
Slides off the edge of that table, and I'm here for it, man. I liked it.
Holy fuck! What an ending. I like the fact that she left Miss K alive. She even says that Steve's still alive and that they can have each other. Dickless Steve and
Steve, as he's now known in the streets.
Yeah, that's it. Dickless Steve and Miss K will have a wonderful time or life together now. They do a really cool zoom on her eyes and face as they head into that freeze frame. We got this really intense, like, fucking did it stare, and I appreciated that. Before we get to the credits,
she's a boss, man. Badass.
We didn't talk about it before, but as it freezes and we go into the credits, we also get the Foxy Brown theme. This is the second time it's appeared in the movie, and like a staple of the blaxploitation genre for me is a theme with the name of the character, a main character in it, playing throughout, and I'm so happy that we have it here for sure.
I remember when we watched Blackula, you were upset because there was not a Blackula theme. Like, there was a song that played during the credits, but it had nothing to do with Blackula. It didn't mention him by name, and you were disappointed. So yeah.
No, this hit the right note for me. I was really excited to have the theme there for sure.
That freeze frame hit the right note for me, like you said, on her intense face. Just fucking job well done. Don't fuck with this lady because Foxy Brown will get you. She's gonna get you, and she got me by the end of this. I was all in. Like, good job by her. A great representation of the genre, and I had a good time watching this. I'm very excited to hear kind of what you thought about it from a rating standpoint. So why don't we transition to our ratings right now? The way we do this, we always rate the movies 2 times on a scale of 1 to 10. 1 to 10 for how bad it is, 1 to 10 for how enjoyable, and the goal is to find movies that are a 10 out of 10 on both scales, or what we call the Crit 20. So I'm just going to kind of freestyle this. We just watched the movie, and my thoughts are kind of still fresh. I haven't exactly formed a rating yet, but this kind of, I don't want to say suffers from, but definitely has some of the like lower budget production value of the blaxploitation genre. There's not a ton of money spent on like sets here or like costumes. I mean, they got the airplane for that sequence where the propeller cuts that dude, but that was also clearly a dummy. Whereas I was impressed as you were that they had a stuntman for kind of the earlier thing with the car chase. But it's not a big budget production, obviously, so that's going to ding it a little bit. I actually thought that the performances, though, were quite good. Like, Pam Grier is a pro. She's a star. She has a good job with this. The guy who played Steve, I thought, was really good. Link, solid performance. Michael, before he's killed. Really, the only person in this who I was kind of like, the fuck are they doing, was Catherine Wall, Lady K. Whatever that accent was she was doing was weird. She was kind of detached in a way, so her performance dragged it down for me a little. But overall, I thought the performances were good. The soundtrack was fucking great. Like, just what you'd hope for from a blaxploitation movie soundtrack. And the plot, maybe you could say it's a little kind of convoluted at times with the whole, like, government agent thing, but then you've also got like the neighborhood community group fighting whatever. Catherine Wall's a drug dealer, but also runs a prostitution ring. There's kind of a lot going on here. They seem to like try to like cram a lot of like relevant social topics, I guess, into one movie, and it doesn't always flow in a way that makes sense. So I'm actually gonna say this is a 6 bad for me. I feel like Coffy had more ridiculous things in it than this. It had more crazy costumes and like hooker fights and stuff. This to me was kind of a more serious tone. That's just my opinion. What do you think?
This one's not going to be a real difference between us because I actually also have it as a 6 bad. So I'm just going to throw out my number right now. We have the same one. So much of it I thought was well done. I thought the acting, and it's kind of a between bad and enjoyable, but I thought the acting was really strong. I thought the story was like predictable but clear and had all of the right pieces. I actually really like the tone too. I felt like it was consistent throughout, except for some kind of comedic interludes in there at points. But for the most part, it was really... So I didn't actually find it that bad, which is why I only had it as a 6. Enjoyability. I thought the acting was tremendous. I thought Pam Grier was really good. I thought Link was good. Steve, like you said, was very, very good. Some of the extras were not as good. The women in the lesbian bar.
Yeah.
And
some of the other hookers.
Yeah, they
Claudia
struggled a
is
bit.
not the best.
No, she's not. But the main people in it do a really good job with acting, which I enjoyed. I thought the pace, you said it maybe at times it waned or was a little slow, but I thought I was connected the whole time. I thought the theme song was amazing, and it was hit the right notes when it came in there, along with the rest of the music. I actually enjoyed the action sequences, despite them being unbelievable and sometimes over the top. I thought they and the makeup and effects were mostly well done. Obviously, the plane hitting a person, they didn't have the budget to develop something that looked realistic. It was very enjoyable. Yeah. But I also thought that the ending was really good. Like, everything that happened after the ranch really contributed to an enjoyable experience for me. I had this as an 8 enjoyable, so I really liked watching it. I think if it didn't have the ranch section in it, right, and didn't have some of that other language, it was going to be a 9. Like, this, it would have been one higher for me, and I think you can make good arguments about why that was included in that hero's journey. It was just too far for me as an audience member. It was just something that I struggled with. Yeah, I guess that's sort of where I had it. So I had this as an 8 enjoyable and 6 bad.
All right, that's totally fair, and I'm not going to be too far off from you here. I liked a lot of the same stuff you did. The acting performances were good. The action scenes, reasonably enjoyable. No real problem there for me. The effects, again, stuntman at the beginning, good stuff. Dummy getting shot by a propeller, ridiculous, but it made me laugh. But we laughed.
Yeah, it was funny. Yeah.
Yeah. Like I said, for me, this kind of dragged in some places. The lesbian bar fight scene really brought nothing to the table for me, except the chair smashes were pretty enjoyable. But like, I don't know, again, like a more serious version of Coffy, but less enjoyable for that reason. But this still had a lot of good stuff in it. Again, Pam Grier, just a fucking star. I love seeing her in anything. The performance is strong. Soundtrack, great. I agree with you on that one. Really good music. And the theme song. I also really enjoyed the opening credit sequence. That kind of like the two-toned thing with the silhouettes, but then you're also getting like Pam Grier and sort of like an early green screen, whatever.
Some Bond-inspired shit.
Yeah, there was a Bond element for that for sure. Yeah. I like that. I will also agree with you about the after the ranch. These guys, the thing with the plane and them castrating Steve, and then that last scene where she shows up with his dick in a jar, that whole thing, just like, man, because the end of Coffy, also very powerful, where she confronts her boyfriend, who's the guy who's betrayed the black community, and she shoots him in the dick and like kind of walks, like that powerful scene. I found this to be like just as powerful, a different way, but still like she's it, man. And that zoom in at the end and the freeze frame like makes it clear. So I had Coffy as a 9 enjoyable, which is actually higher than I thought. I thought it was like an 8. I've had it as an 8 before.
Oh, okay.
So I didn't find this as enjoyable, so I'm going to put it a little bit lower. So I had this as a 7 enjoyable, but that's partly because with the added bonus point I always give for the freeze frame, it's going to get bumped up to an 8. I didn't want to put this the same number as Coffy because I do like Coffy more. If I could only watch one of these, I would watch Coffy, but I still enjoyed this. So I'm gonna keep it as a 7 plus 1 for the freeze frame, makes it an 8. 1 below what I had the enjoyable for Coffy, but overall, you can't go wrong with Pam Grier just out there kicking ass, cleaning up the streets and getting revenge for whatever wrongs have been committed against her. It's good stuff.
Absolutely. I think it's awesome, and she did a really good job in those spaces. Would have been better if these weren't the only roles to her. Absolutely, right? We wouldn't argue to go back to that time any place, right? But she did so much with what she was given, and I'm glad that led to a career later too, right?
Well, and this is why it's so great that she got to be the lead in Jackie Brown, because that was obviously a major studio production, hot director. Like, she got to play a role with a little more nuance where she's older and that plays into it too, but she doesn't have to be like, you know, popping her top or like whatever else. She gets to kind of be this like clever person sort of steering the events of that narrative. And that's, you know, you wonder what could have been if it was a different time and if she came along in a different era, but it is what was available. And these roles were meaningful to a lot of people. I'm sure a lot of Black people saw her in this role and were like, fuck yeah, this is what we've been waiting for. So, and again, that's the double-edged sword of the Blaxploitation genre, right? Like, it gave opportunity, but they weren't great opportunities, but you know, it's still representation. So a fitting end, I feel, for us to kind of wrap up Black History Month, because we'll be out of that next month into our next episode. What do you think of this beer, though? Let's get on to that before we get out of here.
Delicious. Easy to drink. Had stronger burnt malt flavors at the start than I remembered.
I thought the same thing. Smoky. It was smoky.
Yeah. You get that kind of almost porter-like flavor at the start of it, but finishes much sweeter. Very drinkable. Enjoyed it quite a lot. Nice depth of flavor. I would definitely go back downtown on this brown.
Yeah, man. You know what's funny is I actually had in my notes as well, I'm like, this to me tastes more like a porter than a fucking brown ale. I thought the exact same thing. I like the smokiness because I like a smoky fucking beer. I like porter, so to me, I'm like, this is kind of a cool combination of two different things here, melding of two styles.
You enjoyed all that nut in your mouth.
Absolutely, I did. Mm-hmm. And I'll tell you what else I'm going to enjoy, and hopefully everyone else will too, is 2 weeks from today, we're finally talking Sergeant Kabuki Man, NYPD. This was a delayed episode. We tried to do it fucking back in 2024, and it didn't happen, but it's happening now. And we've got a special guest star for this episode, a massive movie lover. Why don't you tell everyone who our guest star will be for our next episode?
Oh, my friend Mike. Mike from Far Side in both Toronto and Hamilton. Is such a huge movie guy. Far Side, if you've never been, is a tremendous bar in both Toronto and Hamilton that focuses on the retro. They play movies often when you're in there in the background. Straight from VHS, they have it hooked up where you can watch all these classic movies. I know Mike is a big Trauma fan, so we're getting a chance to watch a movie with him that I know he's going to love talking about. He is an awesome dude, and I think he will add a lot to our conversation, so I'm really excited to do this with him.
Me too, man. I've never met the guy before, but I've heard good things from you. Always nice to meet a fellow cinephile, especially somebody who comes from the VCR era, like you and I, rocking the VHS. I like that. Looking forward to this very much. We're finally doing it. My New Year's resolution has come true. Sergeant Kabuki Man, NYPD. That's in 2 weeks. Before then, if you haven't already, please follow us on social media at the BMB Podcast on Twitter and Instagram.
Feel free to send us emails, thebmbpodcast@gmail.com.
Yes, please. Our season is kind of heading into the last sort of stage here, but we still have time if you want to send us a request for an episode. We can maybe squeeze in. We've actually got a request coming up in a couple weeks from a while ago, so don't be afraid to hit us up for something. And thank you for joining us today for Foxy Brown. We hope to see you in 2 weeks' time for Sergeant Kabuki Man, NYPD. Until then, I'm Cooper.
And I'm Nolan.
And we'll see you next time on Bad Movies and Beer.
Keep going downtown on Foxy Brown.
Don't mess around with Foxy Brown.